Of history, you are in luck. If you are a fan of John F. Kennedy or the Warren Commission, or you're intrigued by the history that surrounds it, you are in luck. Greg Willard is with us, KTRS legal analyst. Good morning, Greg Willard.
Good morning, McGraw.
You've been on the show numerous times talking about the Supreme Court and the current laws and everything else. You are a St. Louis University law professor, but you, and I'll tell you exactly how this happened. You were on the show one of these days, and off the air, I said, hey, did you ever talk to Gerald Ford, who was on the Warren Commission, as a congressman, right? He was a
congressman. He and Hale Boggs were the two House members on the commission.
I said, did you ever talk, because you worked for Gerald Ford, and I said, did you ever have a conversation? He said, you had lots of conversations. And I said, would you ever want to come on the show and talk about it? And you said, absolutely. And I said, well, next time something comes up, and lo and behold, 3 weeks later, they decide to release...
Big day tomorrow.
All the documents. So we'll get to the... So explain to people, what are these documents? How big of a deal is this? And are you expecting any revelations from these documents?
There was a statute passed in 1992, McGraw, that provided that the remaining documents relevant to President Kennedy's assassination are to be released within 25 years unless the then sitting president holds some of them back for national security reasons. So you have to assume out of the gate that most of these documents contain classified national security information.
Because these are the last documents.
These are the last ones. So what you won't, or conspiracy theorists won't learn tomorrow, is that the existence of some smoking gun document as to the shooting itself. My suspicion, McGraw, is assuming that President Trump allows them to be released, it will relate to Oswald's trip to the Soviet embassy in Mexico City.
Okay.
Maybe some of his activities with in New Orleans with the hands-off Cuba protests that he was engaged in. But I think in terms of any revelations about the gunman on the grassy knoll, we won't see any of that.
So how come the government would hold these back, pouring gasoline on the conspiracy theorists? Why would they hold these back all these years? Why not just release it and tell the whole story?
Yeah, but there's a balance, and on one side of the pendulum is the one you point out, and that is, well, let's get the facts out and tell the story. The other is, as I expect, that they contain classified information, the disclosure of which would, among other things, disclose sources and methods that the intelligence community uses. And the government makes a judgment that it is more important to protect those sources and methods than it is to, quote, get all the facts out about President Kennedy's assassination.
So we'll take the hit just as long as they don't realize we had bugged Cuba's city hall or something.
Yes. And to be clear, this goes on every single day. It is going on this morning in Washington that the intelligence community may have information that is very relevant in other contexts.
Right.
But the judgment is made, we can't reveal that information for whatever reason, but quite often it's sources and methods.
That's a great point. The Imitation Game, where they talked about the Enigma machine, there's a scene in that movie where they're like, we can't tell anybody that we know the Germans are here because they'll know we broke their code.
And immediately the submarines will begin transmitting using different codes.
Yeah. Okay, so the Warren Commission was set up for this exact reason, so that the facts would come out, so that people would truly know the truth, and that there wouldn't be any conspiracy theories about the Kennedy assassination, but it did the exact opposite.
Well, yes and no. I think given a whole variety of circumstances, there could have been every single morsel of information and fact released, and there would still have been conspiracy theorists, McGraw. So I don't think necessarily it was how the commission was formed, how they did their work, and what their work product was. I think, again, for a variety of reasons, and I remember living through those years and reading Mark Lane's book, that there was something about the Kennedy assassination all the facts or some of the facts, whatever, that fostered these conspiracy theories.
The Warren Commission, hosted by Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren, ultimately concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone.
He acted alone, and let's focus on that word, that verb, acted. Acted alone in shooting the president and killing John Kennedy.
Okay.
Acted alone in terms of whether there were other people or ideals or forces that served to motivate his mind, as sick as it was. Sure, we will never know everything that went into him committing the act, but in terms of who pulled the trigger in Dealey Plaza,
Right.
who killed John Kennedy and wounded Governor Connally, the Warren Commission was unequivocal. Lee Harvey Oswald did it.
Okay.
He fired the 3 shots.
Now, you being a student of history, you being there oftentimes for the front row of history, as counsel for Gerald Ford, how do you start a conversation with a member of the Warren Commission and say, hey, boss, so what's up with this Warren Commission thing? Tell me this single bullet theory, dude.
What's up? Well, I guess a couple of thoughts. First, I had two lengthy conversations with him in my almost 30-year journey with him. One was on a late-night flight. We were flying back to California, and I don't remember the circumstances, but somehow we got on the topic.
Right.
And then in the twilight of his life, sitting with him in Rancho Mirage, we resumed the conversation, and then that resulted subsequently in one of the most gracious gifts that he ever gave me was one of his 2 signed copies of the Warren Commission's official portrait.
You brought that in. It's a picture of the 8 of them, the 7 of them.
7 of them. It's the 7 of them. And then Lee Rankin, who was the general counsel, McGraw, of the commission.
7 autographed. This isn't some photocopy or print. This is all 7 of the Warren Commission signed that picture.
They did, and the president had 2, and he kept them in his desk.
Yeah.
I had it framed, but he had the 2 photographs in his desk, and he graciously said that he wanted me to have one, and he gave the other to his son-in-law, my friend Baden. He
and the Warren Commission stood by their findings.
They did, and in my conversations with him, McGraw, he was as he often was emphatic when he was resolute in a particular item or issue. He was resolute. Lee Harvey Oswald killed John Kennedy, period, full stop. And to his dying day, President Ford continued to say emphatically, I have never seen one scintilla of evidence that there was any other gunman other than Lee Harvey Oswald. And I think what was terrific for Gerald Ford was that he was given the gift of years to have the benefit of the view of history. And he saw it in 2 particular contexts. One was history came to view his pardon of Richard Nixon as one of the most courageous presidential decisions in history.
Right.
Secondly, he came to be able to view the historical lens on the Warren Commission's finding, and with the advent of technology, and as technology began to be able to reassess it and confirm, using modern forensic techniques, that in fact Lee Harvey Oswald killed John Kennedy.
We'll get to the forensics in a moment. Yesterday, a guy called up and was emphatic that the man spoke like he was there in Dealey Plaza. And clearly, the 40 expert witnesses who were there said that it was the grassy knoll. Bullets were flying over people's heads. It's a fact, McGraw. You're wrong. There was a second shooter in the grassy knoll. Everybody knows it. The government doesn't want us to know about it. What does the Warren Commission say, and what do you say?
What the Warren Commission says, what I say, and I think any objective observer would say is there is, to paraphrase my former boss, President Ford, there is not one scintilla of evidence, not speculation, evidence that there was a second gunman on the grassy knoll. And here we are all these years later, and to this day, McGraw, there's not been a single shred of evidence, a rifle casing, a photograph, an eyewitness, nobody nobody as a shooter other than Lee Harvey Oswald in the 6th floor of the book depository.
What about the theory that Lee Harvey Oswald did it, but the mob got to him, Cuba got to him, Russia got to him, the mafia got to him, and he was hired by somebody higher up, somebody in the CIA got to him to like the Oliver Stone movie, to ratchet up the Vietnam War. What does the Warren Commission say about the motivation?
The commission doesn't draw any specific conclusions, and I think for a darn good reason. It's nigh impossible, McGraw, to specifically conclude the motivations of someone as deranged as Lee Harvey Oswald. Why was it? What was the motivation that John Hinckley tried to kill Ronald Reagan?
Right.
What was the motivation that Sarah Jane Moore and Squeaky Fromm tried to assassinate Gerald Ford in 1975?
Right.
So, as I said earlier, you can draw a whole mosaic, McGraw, of factors and possible influences in the deranged mind of Lee Harvey Oswald. But to say he was hired by the CIA, that's taking this uncertainty of motive to, I think, borderline silliness.
Right. Okay. You've been to the 6th floor book depository.
I have.
You've looked outside the window.
Yes.
I know it's
frightening.
I know it's encased in glass with the boxes to make it look like it was the day. So you can look through the boxes and through the glass. Mm-hmm. It's a little cornered off. But all you have to do is visit the 6th floor to realize anybody could have shot the president that day.
My sentiments exactly, McGraw. It's frightening how small, I guess, just physically small Dealey Plaza is, and therefore how relatively close Oswald was from that 6th floor window.
We'll get to the magic bullet here in just a second. Greg Willard, our guest, St. Louis University law professor, but in an earlier life, he was and I always get this wrong, you were White House counsel?
White House staff assistant to President Ford, then moved to California and served as his personal aide, and in later years provided legal advice to him.
And he gave you a copy of the leather-bound Warren Commission signed by him?
He did. As part of the gift, he gave me his signed portrait. He also gave me a leather-bound copy of the commission report.
Some pretty neat stuff there, Greg Willard.
Nice memento from the president.
We'll come back, talk more with him in just a second. 922 here, Big 550 KTRS. Bowen Dental Care. You need dental implants? We've got them for you at Bowen Dental Care. It's that family-run dentistry that you want to gravitate towards. The corporations, they have quotas. You sit down, it's an assembly line in a sense. When you agree to dental implants, they have doctors all around town that have each different procedure. So you go to a different doctor in a different part of town every single time you have to go with the process of getting dental implants. At Bowen Dental Care, all the work is done by him. All the work is done in his world headquarters on Dunn Road. So you get to know him, he gets to know you. That's the way dentistry should work, and that's the way Bowen Dental Care does it, because he has rejected the corporate world, because he likes to get to know the patients. He likes to get to know the families. That, he feels, is a better way to conduct business. I agree. So if you want that family-run dentistry with the expert hands of Dr. Bowen, BOAIN, Bowen Dental Care, or BowenDentalCare.com.
This is McGraw Live on KPLR 11.2, STLtoday.com, and the Big 550 KTRS.
Proposition P is on the ballot on November 7th, and the stakes couldn't be higher for St. Louis. Prop P is a half-penny sales tax to raise the pay of our city's first responders.
I'm voting for Prop P.
It's not fair that our first responders earn 30% less than they can earn in the county. For St. Louis to be a safer city, we need Prop P to attract and retain the best officers and firefighters right here in St. Louis. Paid for by Citizens for a Safer St. Louis.
I am supporting Prop P.
If you have retirement questions, you can bet Marvin Mitchell probably has the answer. Join him every Sunday afternoon at 3 for Rethinking Retirement. With his years of experience, Marvin can help take the guesswork out of your retirement planning. Rethinking Retirement is your source for all things retirement, from how current events could affect your savings to strategies to maximize your retirement income and everything in between. Don't miss Rethinking Retirement with Marvin Mitchell every Sunday afternoon at 3 on the Big 550 KTRS.
When you have sleep apnea, traveling can be a real drag because you have to drag your big, bulky home CPAP device with you everywhere you go. But not anymore. Now you can travel easily and sleep comfortably anywhere thanks to Transcend, the world's very first mini CPAP. And right now, you can try Transcend absolutely risk-free for 10 restful nights. So call now, 1-800-600-4133. Our smallest and most advanced portable design ever, Transcend is as small as a soda can and weighs less than a pound. You can even add a battery that's as tiny as a deck of cards. Transcend is so incredibly small and light, you can easily fit it in your briefcase or purse to use anywhere you go. It's FAA compliant too, so you can even sleep comfortably while flying. Now you can enjoy the freedom to sleep comfortably anywhere. But don't delay. To receive your 10-night in-home trial, call minicpap.com now. 1-800-600-4133. Again, that's 1-800-600-4133.
At Vinyl Images, our website is WeRepAnything.com. From boats to cars, RVs, food trucks, and even Bigfoots. Vinyl Images will wrap anything. If you're looking for a full or partial wrap, or have a fleet of vehicles you want wrapped, Vinyl Images is your #1 choice. A St. Louis native company with an extremely creative design group to get you what you want. Vinyl Images has the best installers in the world with the hardware to prove it. Head over to WeRepAnything.com and give us the opportunity to earn your business for your next wrap or graphics package.
Hi, it's Jennifer Blome with some great news from my friends at Sound Health Services. They have now opened ENT Now. ENT Now is a walk-in clinic at Manchester and 270 in De Pere Square that offers same-day care for ear, nose, or throat conditions. ENT Now. No appointments necessary. Open 7 to 7 Monday to Friday and Saturdays from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Walk in or call 314-729-0077 or online at soundhealthservices.com. ENT Now.
McGraw, live in the morning on KTRS.
This is graduate level credits we're getting here. Greg Willard, our guest, KTRS legal analyst, but also, more importantly, SLU law professor, as well as a lawyer for Gerald Ford, who sat on the Warren Commission. We're talking on the break. You told a story, but Earl Warren and Gerald Ford went to Dallas to interview Jack Ruby.
They did.
What did they learn when they interviewed Jack Ruby, who, by the way, 3 days later, a couple days later, on national television, killed Lee Harvey Oswald?
He did kill Oswald. They went the following year. Ruby was in custody. They went in June of 1964, McGraw, June 7th, I think it was, of 64. Chief Justice Warren, then Congressman Ford from Michigan, went to Dallas and interviewed at length Jack Ruby. The transcript is online. Our listeners can read it. And it gives you, the transcript gives you a pretty good perspective and view of just the rather odd, to put it mildly, world of Jack Ruby.
Right.
And they satisfied themselves as to the information they were hoping to elicit from Mr. Ruby. As a historical footnote, one of the people who accompanied them was Leon Jaworski.
Yeah.
Who 10 years later, as special prosecutor in Watergate, convinced the Supreme Court to get Nixon to release the smoking gun tape, and a few weeks later Congressman Ford back in '63 became President Gerald Ford.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Interesting. Jack Ruby died in prison, right?
He did. He died shortly. Wasn't I want to say maybe 66, 67. I don't remember exactly, from lung cancer.
And what did he tell the Warren Commission? Was it just a ramblings of a madman? Was he clearly didn't say the CIA told me to do it.
No, it was when you read the transcript, not ramblings of someone who was mentally deranged, but a very, very misguided individual. But was emphatic that he had nothing to do with the assassination. He explained at length the timeline from Friday afternoon until that Sunday morning, less than 48 hours later, when he shot Oswald down the basement of the jail.
On national TV.
On national TV, Sunday morning.
Let's talk about the smoking gun, or the magic bullet theory, because a lot of people think it's crazy that one bullet could do so much damage, go through Connolly's wrist and end up in his thigh and go through the president and everything else. You said on the last segment that technology has proven the Warren Commission correct.
It has, McGraw, and I think the single bullet theory has been probably the cornerstone of conspiracy theorists all the way back to that Friday in Dallas. And the single bullet theory, as it is derided by many, is that on the second shot, and it hit President Kennedy in the neck, exited the front of his neck, and then hit Governor Connolly in the shoulder, passed through his shoulder, his arm, and then into his thigh.
Right.
And when you would see diagrams, it looked like that the bullet would have to make two right-angle moves in midair.
Right.
What modern technology has confirmed is that when you use lasers from the sixth floor window that you and I talked about on the prior segment, and this fact, the jump seat in which Governor Connolly was seated in the presidential limousine was lower in the limousine than the rear seat where the president was seated. And when you line those up with the lower seat with lasers, it matches to the millimeter, McGraw, the path of that bullet.
There's your magic bullet theory. We talked off the air. There's a National Geographic show that's running now, and they allude to the fact that there was a bullet shot either as the president was turning the corner or before he got there.
That's the first bullet, which has remained sort of indeterminate as to exactly when it was fired. But I think the consensus is that it was fired just as the limo was completing its turn, that left turn.
Right.
And there's a lot of speculation that for whatever reason it was deflected and went further down by the Stemmons Freeway. And in fact, there was a gentleman who was struck in the face, believed to be from asphalt coming off of the pavement.
Right, concrete sort of ricocheting from the bullet and hitting the guy in the face.
And so the first bullet did not hit the president. The second bullet hit the president, passed through his body, and seriously injured Governor Connolly. And then the third bullet was the one that is so graphically displayed in the Zapruder film that killed the president.
Oh, so the new evidence, there isn't new evidence that the first bullet, he missed, and he missed when he was turning the corner. But because I had never heard that people had gotten hit by the shrapnel of the concrete or anything.
Well, that's the theory, is that there was an individual down near the underpass of the Stemmons Freeway, and who was injured in his cheek. But if you look at some of the photographs before the second shot, you can see some of the Secret Service agents on the running boards of the follow-up car beginning to turn in the direction of the shot. And so it's that first shot that I think most clearly did not hit anyone in the limo. As to where that that bullet, whether it was deflected or otherwise, where it ended up, we probably will never know.
So when you hear people throughout the years who say, I was watching on TV and they cut into Days of Our Lives, and Walter Cronkite, the first thing he said was there were shots fired from the grassy knoll. Stay tuned to more details. And then they never mentioned the grassy knoll again. I want to make sure I understand this. There's no evidence of anybody saying anything about the grassy knoll with any credibility.
Zero. And I think if you go back, and it's on YouTube, our listeners can pull it up this morning and listen to it. What the theorists say, Cronkite said, he did not say. He didn't say shots fired from the grassy knoll. But the point I think that needs to be made, and that the Warren Commission made, is the one you just touched on, is that whether shots fired from the grassy knoll, from one of the buildings up on Main Street, any number of places, there is not one single shred of evidence 60 years later,
right,
McGraw, 50 years later, that any of those theories is correct. The overwhelming, some would say unassailable, but I'll stick with overwhelming evidence, is, in my judgment, axiomatic, and I think it was in President Ford's. Lee Harvey Oswald fired 3 shots in about a 6.3 second episode.
Which is very doable.
Very doable. One of them missed. One of them hit the president in the neck and Governor Connolly, and the third one, as I said graphically in the Zapruder film, hit the president in the right rear side of his head and killed him.
That's Greg Willard. Do you want to stay for another segment?
Sure, be happy to.
Greg Willard is a law professor, KTRS legal analyst, and worked for Gerald Ford, who was on the Warren Commission. We're talking about the papers that are going to be released tomorrow, the final set of papers on the JFK assassination. Let me tell you about R&R Sanitation Porta Potty, proud sponsor of the show, 314-776-4000. If you need a porta potty, you need R&R Sanitation. There's some people out there who do not care about the customers when they come to their store, and so they might get a porta potty that does not say R&R Sanitation. My recommendation, hold it or go in the woods. Or bring some type of antibiotic, because if you use the competition, you don't know what you're going to catch in that other porta potty. If it doesn't say R&R Sanitation, go in the woods. 314-776-4000 or rnrportabletoilets.com.
What up?
Good morning. It is 9:36. Time now to take a look at traffic with Ed Smearin. Ed?
Got some heavy traffic on 64 eastbound from 170 to Hanley. Elsewhere, pretty good shape, though. Watch for road work on 270 both directions between the Chain of Rocks Bridge and Graham Hanley. That lasts until 3 o'clock, but that area not seeing any big delays. Traffic brought to you by the Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer. The Exergen Temporal Scanner Thermometer is doctor-recommended and backed by more medical studies than any other thermometer. Get yours at your local Club Warehouse and other fine retailers today. From the KTRS Traffic Center, I'm Ed Smarin on the Big 550 KTRS.
Chilly start this morning, some spots in the 30s, but a quick warm-up this afternoon. A gusty west breeze, plenty of sun, and a high in the low to mid-60s. Nice-looking afternoon. Clear tonight, not quite as cold, 48 for the low. Thursday looks good, sunshine warming up, highs in the low to mid-70s. Thursday, the warmest day of the week. And then another cold front gets here. A couple of scattered showers and thunder showers around Friday into Friday night, with dropping temperatures into the weekend. I'm Fox 2 meteorologist Glenn Zimmerman for the Big 550 KTRS.
Thank you very much, Glenn. It is 9:38 at the Winter World Studios. 47 degrees at the Big 550 KTRS.
This is McGraw Live on KPLR 11.2, STLtoday.com, and the Big 550 KTRS.
Some exclusions apply. See Design Consultant for details. The holidays are coming, the time when family and friends get together. This year, wow them with your home's warmth and beauty. Created by new window treatments from 3-Day Blinds. With so many stylish, affordable choices of blinds, shades, shutters, or drapes, 3-Day Blinds takes all the guesswork and legwork away by bringing the showroom to you. With custom window fashions to fit your taste and budget. Just relax and decide your own home with a 3-Day Blinds Design Consultant guide you through every step of the way at no cost. Best of all, you're buying the smart way straight from the manufacturer. At 3-Day Blinds, window fashion's all we do, and for nearly 40 years and millions of custom window treatments, we've been the name people trust. Transform your home for the holiday season and lower utility bills year-round with stylish, energy-saving window fashions. Right now, buy any custom blind, shade, drape, or curtain and get free installation. To schedule your free in-home design consultation, call 800-806-7422. That's 800-806-7422. 800-806-7422.
Policies issued by American General Life Insurance Company, Houston, Texas. Not available in all states. For details, visit AIDdirect.com.
If you're young and healthy, you don't need life insurance, right? Yeah, that's what I used to think too. Until my brother died at 38. Joe left his wife with 2 kids, a mortgage, and a stack of bills she couldn't pay. Mary had to sell the house and move everybody into surprised how affordable it is. Just $14 a month for $250,000 of term life coverage. Listen, if you have a family, you should seriously think about getting life insurance. You'll feel a lot better having it, trust me.
Call AIG Direct for a free no-obligation quote. The call takes less than 5 minutes, and you could save up to 70%. Call now, 1-800-400-1284. That's 1-800-400-1284. 1-800-400-1284.
Van City RV on Telegraph Road, just north of I-255 in South County, is having a major sale on Renegade RVs. Love to travel in luxury? Have an adventurous side? Then you need a Renegade. Van City RV is the nation's largest luxury RV dealer. If you haven't seen a Renegade, you don't know what you're missing. Verona, Vienna, the XL, Icon, and so many more. Don't miss this Renegade sale going on now at Van City on Telegraph Road or see vancityrv.com.
Are we ready to open next month?
I think so.
You think so?
Well, it's complicated. Fire protection, first aid supplies, uniforms, safety training, mat services. Oh, and restroom supplies.
So uncomplicated. Call Cintas. They'll handle all of it.
Wow, one company can handle all that? That's not very complicated.
So, you'll be ready?
Oh, we'll be ready.
Learn how Cintas can help you get ready for the workday. Visit Cintas.com.
Hi, this is Jeff Lapidus, the retirement coach. If you want to make smart choices about your retirement planning, listen to my show, Straight Talk on Retirement, this Saturday at 10 a.m. here on the Big 550 KTRS.
McGraw, live in the morning on KTRS.
941, Big 550 KTRS. Greg Willard with us for another segment. This is a fascinating look at the Warren Commission, what they said, the documents that are going to be released tomorrow. You said something on the break. In 1963, it was not a federal crime to kill the President of the United States.
Correct. It was not a federal criminal statute at that time.
Okay, so you then told me the story. That's why there was a fight over the body in the hospital.
It was a horribly unfortunate incident at Parkland Hospital. The president was shot, I think, at about 12:31. I think he continued to have a pulse for maybe half an hour, but I think most people would have said he'd passed there in Dealey Plaza. They arranged for him to be given the last rites of the Catholic Church, and a casket was brought over, and arrangements were then made to remove the remains in the casket to Air Force One. In the meantime, officials from Dallas said, you can't take the body. We have a homicide, and until we complete the autopsy, you can't remove the body. And there was a physical altercation between members of the Kennedy staff and the Kennedy Secret Service detail and officials from Dallas as to removing the casket with the remains.
So the officials from Dallas, sounds like they had a pretty good argument.
They did have an argument, and there was somewhat of a compromised reach. I think it was the president's physician, Admiral Berkeley, I think was his name, but a compromise was fashioned of sorts that if the admiral remained with the remains and the autopsy were conducted in Washington and there was a continuity of his presence, that would satisfy.
Wasn't there a controversy over the autopsy, or was that the controversy?
No, well, the controversy over the autopsy, and again, we get into the world of conspiracy theorists, but why wasn't the autopsy done by the homicide investigators, the Dallas coroner, were the people who performed the autopsy, were they really trained pathologists, all of those types of things.
Right.
But again, I think in fairness, it didn't matter what happened with the autopsy. There would always be questions.
Yeah. Let's finish up with the documents that are going to be released tomorrow, so we think.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lee Harvey Oswald, he was a weird guy. He spent time in Russia. There were stories that Russia threw him out. They said, "You're nuts. You're wasting our time. You said you were a Marine and you had access. You're nothing more than a nut." So he got kicked out of Russia.
Renounced his U.S. citizenship.
Right.
Married a Marina. His wife was Russian.
And then went to Cuba and got caught up. I mean, he was sort of a loner looking for a cause, more or less.
Tried to assassinate General Walker in his home, and Oswald tried to assassinate him.
It lends itself to a conspiracy theory. If he spent time in Russia, was for the Cubans, and I mean, it's a perfect guy to pick if you want to start a controversy with.
Sure, because it's the unknown, or the old saying, proving a negative. But clearly, you can take the life story of Lee Harvey Oswald, and the concluding chapter of which is he kills the president, and 24 hours or 48 hours later, he himself, Oswald, is killed.
Right.
And then from that, it is tremendous fodder, McGraw, from that life story to spin conspiracy theories.
Right.
But similarly, go look at the life story of John Hinckley. Look at the life story of Squeaky Fromm.
Right.
Sarah Jane Moore. And you too, if you wanted to weave some conspiracy theories. But at the core, whether it's those three, John Wilkes Booth, Garfield's assassin, McKinley's assassin, they were, by definition, any rational person would not commit an act like that.
It seems like the Warren Commission report has gotten. Now, it still a poll came out the other day. 61% of Americans think Lee Harvey Oswald either acted with somebody else or was hired or whatever else. But the Warren Commission, it seems like, has gone through varying degrees of popularity, and I would say probably now, and it's just a question, that more people believe the Warren Commission today than at any other time in the history. Is that where are we?
I think if my former boss, President Ford, were sitting here, he would agree with this statement, McGraw. The Warren Commission's conclusion that Lee Harvey Oswald killed John F. Kennedy has stood the test of time. That, back to our verb discussion earlier on, that act. Now, the motive, which the Warren Commission did not conclude, the motive, we can speculate forever. We will never know by definition.
Right.
But I think it is fair to say, despite the fact that the poll you and I saw, that 2/3 of the American people didn't think he acted, don't think he acted alone. I think if our listeners would just bifurcate the act of the shooting of Kennedy and the act of the motives leading up to it.
But there are two different motives in that the motive of the Las Vegas shooter, right? He's deranged. He was anti-government. He's pro this, right? That's a motive that sort of mentally has issues. But there's other sort of sinister law and order motives. The CIA wanted to start a war in Vietnam. Cuba wanted him out. Khrushchev wanted him out, right? So, I mean, those are quote-unquote motives. And there's no credible evidence of any of those conspiracy theory motives that hired Lee Harvey Oswald to do this.
Correct. There's not one scintilla of evidence that anybody hired Oswald to do it. And I am as certain as you and I are sitting here, McGraw, that when the documents are released tomorrow, there will continue to be not a single morsel.
Oh, what are you looking at with these documents? What do you want to know about these documents? What's curious in your mind?
I think what we will see tomorrow is an example of the old saying, past is prologue. In that I think what we will find tomorrow is additional evidence that from a counterintelligence, not criminal, from a counterintelligence standpoint, the FBI had more information about Oswald's activities.
Mm-hmm.
The FBI shared none of that, zero, with the United States Secret Service. And the Warren Commission report, not vehemently, but it criticized that lack of communication between the FBI and the Secret Service. Lack of communication, the lack of sharing intelligence between two agencies of our government.
Right.
Fast forward, McGraw, to the 9/11 Commission report. And if you will remember, and our listeners will remember, one of the core criticisms in the 9/11 Commission report was identical to the criticism in the Warren Commission report, that in 9/11, different branches of the intelligence community had information about the terrorists that was not shared with other branches of the intelligence community.
But my history teachers at the University of Nebraska taught me that it's much easier to look back in hindsight and say the FBI should have told me about this nut job who went to Soviet Union, who went to Mexico City, who went to Cuba, whatever else. But there are 1,000 nut jobs out there. This is the one who acted on it. So it's almost impossible to say to be proactive beforehand and say, hey, this guy Lee Harvey Oswald just might be capable of doing something terrible.
And a very fair comment, and I think in defense of the FBI back in this 1963, is from a counterintelligence function, institutionally, I don't think anyone even contemplated a dot, much less connected, of, oh, well, we need to share this counterintelligence information with the United States Secret Service.
Right.
Really?
Right.
Now, in 2017, post 9/11 Commission report, the institutional structures and intra-communications of the intelligence community have all changed for the better and substantially changed as compared to 1963, McGraw.
That is Greg Willard, and everybody gets 2 credit hours for this one. Good stuff. I was looking forward to this all week. That's Greg Willard, who is a professor at St. Louis University Law. He brought in the show and tell. He's got a leather-bound book, The Warren Commission, signed by Gerald Ford, and that picture is priceless. The picture of the and we should say the Russell guy. Who's the Russell guy?
Senator Russell. He was one of the commission members from Georgia,
and
Richard Russell.
The Senate building is called the Russell Building.
Correct. Named after
him. There you go. Craig, thanks, sir.
Great to be with you, my friend.
9:51.